The teaching text today is Jonah 1:1-3. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated.
Little diagnostic check-in for you on the state of your heart. I just want you to imagine for a second, we're in that little doctor's office, and you've got the table with the paper where you put the pickle at the deli. Do you know what and you're going to hop up on the table, and we're going to talk about what's happening inside of your heart. Little diagnostic checkup on the state of your heart. Necessary. It's necessary to be a human being to pay attention to the status, the reality, the condition of your heart. Now, I understand it's at the, hey, wait, Scott, it's just November. We don't do this till January. Okay, all right. Almost November, December, almost the end of the year. But let's just assume that you were at coffee and you were talking to someone that you trusted, and they said to you, hey, pause, time out. How is it with your heart? What would you say? I mean, looking back over the last several months, anything hurt you? People say things to you, actions taken against you, tragedies, things that were unfair. Anything hurt you? You nursing any wounds? Anything shape you over the last of these? You entered into a relationship, or you had a change of your mind, or a change of your perspective. Maybe someone asked you a question somewhere in the course of the year that changed your perspective and it shaped you. What has anything changed you? Are you different? Are you a different person now than you were 10 months ago? Has anything helped you? If you look at the condition of your heart, maybe you were in a group and you were sitting there and somebody asked a question and you went, oh wow, I had never thought of that. And that question has shaped you and helped you. Or maybe you were a part of the marriage conference that was here a couple of weeks ago. I've heard multiple people say how that helped them. Or maybe you served in the pantry, or you served in kids ministry, and you were serving with kids, and like kids do, they said something to you, and you went, whoa, wow, how kids will speak the truth, Maybe it was a message that you heard. This has been, we call each year, we give it a theme, and we've called this the year of transformation. Here's some of the series we've been in. We talked about praying. We talked about the God that you wish you knew, the parables that Jesus told in Luke chapter 6. We talked through the book of James, you in 5 years. We talked about your identity in the book of Ephesians. We talked about experiencing the Holy Spirit. We talked about the cost of living. We just finished a series on the game plan for your family. So here's what we're doing. Right before Christmas is we're pausing and asking if we could, you and I, today, just for a few minutes, if you would, if you'd indulge me, do a little bit of heart work. I ran for a long time, had a back injury. Doctor told me you should never run again if you want to walk when you're old. And I said, I like walking. So I had to stop running. But when I ran, we would do this thing. We would call it hill work. You would go out and you find a hill and you run up the hill as fast as you can, and you come back down and you are out of breath, and then you do it. You do multiple reps of that. And it was called hill work, and it built your lung capacity and your heart capacity, the VO2 max ability of your body. I want to suggest we're doing something similar, but we're not doing hill work, we're doing heart work. Sometimes as a staff, we'll talk about what kind of meeting are we having right now? Are we having a meeting? And this is, we borrowed this language. Are we working on the business or working in the business? And in the business meeting is, what do we need to do next? And what's the next thing? On the business is when you go, now are we doing the right things? Or do we have the right attitude? Or our values right? We have these on the business kind of meetings. That's what this morning is. We're working on you. We're looking at, and now it's just a small little teeny tiny thing, no biggie. We're just after a radical reordering of your inner world values and outlook. So no big deal, right? Relax. Easy. The goal is that you are on the path of transformation. Now, if you've been here for a little bit, we've talked about transformation. It's kind of like when your kid is growing, and they have the little marks on the door, and you don't see that when you're with them all the time, you don't see the growth until, 6 months later, and then they're higher. You didn't know that the transformation was happening as it was happening. That's how transformation works. You don't see it at the time. But here's the heart of transformation. True transformation is always what we're talking about this morning. Transformation of the heart. You want some kind of change in your life, whatever it might be. I promise you, the solution to that, the answer to that, is a transformation of your heart opening, your heart softening, your heart being warmer. Here's the goal we're after this morning. We want God to give us a bigger heart. A bigger heart. Now, we're going to use the lens that you might not expect, and it's a story in the Bible that is often overlooked. We read it, the first few verses of the story. It's the story of Jonah, the prophet in the Old Testament. Now, most people, when they hear Jonah, they go, what, a children's story? If you grew up in Sunday school, you learned about Jonah and the what? Jonah and the whale. Whale's not actually in the text, people. Come on, do your homework. It's actually fish. That's used 3 times. A big fish is the word that's used there, literally the word for fish. And it's only in 3 verses, verse 17 of chapter 1, verse 1 of chapter 2, and verse 10 of chapter 2. And there's 48 verses, so very, very small. It's not actually a story about a whale. That's not what the story is about. It's actually a story about transformation of the heart. And it has all of these resonant themes for our current moment that we live in. If you read any of the things that I send out during the week, I send out an email about this series, and I just tried to sketch the world that I live in. And I think you live in this same world. I'm just going to read you what I wrote. If you read it already, this is a review. But if you didn't, here you go. This is what you're missing when you hit delete on those emails. This is the world I live in. Race is a constant issue. Discussions about nationalism and immigration are on the rise, and sides are being taken. Deciding who is an enemy and who is not is becoming normative. It's becoming hard to believe in grace. And layer onto that what seems like a resurgence of interest in God by wicked people. Does that sound like the world you live in? Because that's the world that I live in. Race, cities, politics, religion, prejudice, evil. That's actually the real theme of the book of Jonah. And the book of Jonah is a story about how you work through all of the issues that you are facing so that you can receive from God the goal that God is after in your life, which is a bigger heart. Anybody want that? So we're going to look at 3 great things. We're going to look at the great city and why we need to care about it, because this is a theme of the book of Jonah. The great heart of God, which is another theme in the book of Jonah. And then I'm going to apply it. I'm going to give you some information, some background, some context so that you understand. And then I promise that if you'll stay with me to the end, there is an application for this. I want to build a case for the change that you and I need in our hearts so that we can have a bigger heart. Are you ready? The great city. Now, I know you didn't come this morning to hear a theology of the city, but if you'll give me 5 minutes and hang with me, I promise you this could potentially change your life. Are you with me? The great city. Now, this is a word that gets used 3 times in the book. Here in verse 1 of chapter 2, Jonah chapter 1, verse 1, go to the great city of Nineveh. That's how the book starts out. And then in chapter 3, God says it again to Jonah, go to the great city of Nineveh. And then the last verse of the book is a question that ends with the word city. Should I not care for that great city? Greatness in size is definitely referenced here, but it's maybe more greatness in importance, because cities are strategic. I'm borrowing this from Tim Keller, who's one of my heroes, who pastored in New York City for decades. Orthodox Christian, built an evangelical congregation in the heart of Manhattan, about 5,000 people. One of my heroes. Here's what he says. He says, in cities there are more plants than people. Since God cares more for people than plants, that must mean that God cares more for cities than the country. Let me say that to you again. In cities, there are more plants than people, and since God cares more for people than plants, God cares more for cities than for the country. I recognize if we were in Johnson, Kansas, you would shoot me. You're like, wait a second. Do you not understand what we do out here in the fields? You don't get it? Here's the reason. The reason God cares more about cities than the country. because cities have what I'm going to call an IOG per square mile. They have a higher IOG per square mile. What's IOG? The image of God. They have more image of God per square mile. What do I mean? Image of God is a reference to a person. There are more people made in the image of God. I love a good plant. I love a good tree. I'm grateful for corn. I'm grateful for wheat. It was not made in the image of God. You were, and I was, and everyone that you know was. The cities have a higher image of God per square mile. This was the strategy of the early Christians, is they went into the cities. When you read all the letters that Paul wrote in the New Testament, Corinthians to Corinth and Thessalonica and Philippi, he went in strategically into the city area and shared the message of Jesus, because he understood that cities are great. They're strategic. They're important. And if you want to reach individual people, you go to the rural areas. But if you want to reach cultures, you go to the cities. Here's a picture of the Via Ignatia, which was one of the ancient Roman roads. It's near the city of Philippi. This is the ruins near the city of Philippi. And this was a network of roads that went through the Roman Empire. And Paul utilized that network of roads to plant the gospel. He reached cities and he reached cultures. That was the early strategy of the Christians, was we're going to go into the cities and we're going to love the people in the cities and we're going to share the gospel in the cities, and then that message will spread out to the areas outside the city. Now, the Bible has a lot to say about cities. One of the cities that gets repeated over and over again is the city of Babylon. In fact, in the book of Revelation, Babylon is a symbol for human cities gone wrong. But Babylon was a place where they captured the Israelite people and took them off into exile. And the prophet Jeremiah wrote a letter to the Jewish people who were in exile in the city of Babylon. And he wrote them one of my favorite things. When you exit the doors today, if you're here in the room, you'll see Jeremiah 29:7 on the walls as you exit right here. This is what he said. He said, "Seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper." So even in a wicked city, God says, seek the peace and prosperity of the city. Jerusalem is the city of God. Psalm 48:1-2. Great is the Lord, most worthy of praise, in the city of our God. And heaven is painted as a city. Heaven is a city. Here's Revelation 21:2. "I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband." What am I trying to say? God loves cities because there's people in cities. That's a theology of the city. Now, here's what I know, and I'm going to apply this to us. Cities are beautiful and they're hard. I love the multitude of murals that are all around our city. I've got a few pictures of them. I will kind of routinely take pictures and post them online. I think they're beautiful. They're all over our city, because cities are always this way. If you go to any great city, what you will find is you'll find public art and sources of beauty. And almost always in the city is the seat of government. Our seat of government is no different. And you'll find things like the source of income. Here's a multi-billion-dollar business. That's their protein headquarters. Cargill is just a mile or so away from here. Because the cities are beautiful like that. They have all these things happening at the same time. And then at the same time, cities are really hard because there's a huge, gigantic disparity on display. We lived for a little while in St. Louis, Missouri, pastored a church there, and there's a famous road. It's called Delmar Boulevard. If you've ever been to St. Louis, if you've been to the zoo in St. Louis, it's not far from the zoo in St. Louis. And Delmar Boulevard goes north and south. And on one side of Delmar Boulevard, at the northern, or the end of Forest Park where the zoo is, it's a beautiful area, lovely high-end shops, restaurants, expensive condos and apartments. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place. When you get to Delmar Boulevard and you literally go across Delmar Boulevard, it literally feels like the world blew up. They've done documentaries. They've said this is amazing because on one side of the street is all of this wealth, and on the literal other side of the street is all of this poverty. And honestly, that's every city I've ever visited is exactly that way. Right, poverty and wealth sit right next to each other. No different in our city. Did you know where we are physically located right now is what's known as a food desert? Do you know what a food desert is? A food desert has been designated as a place where it's hard for people to get access to fresh fruit and vegetables and nutritious foods. And we are literally, if you see the map there, the little yellow that's where we're located. These are the food deserts in Wichita. We're right here. Here's what happens. See, when you live in the burbs, we live in the burbs. Desperation is hidden in the burbs. Why? Because you drive in, you close the garage, and then you lose it on the inside of your house, and no one has to see all your junk. When you're in the city, people without homes or don't have those resources or aren't wanted in the suburbs, so they go to the cities, and so you have an increase in homelessness. And if you know anything about homelessness, you know that mental illness is a big part of homelessness. It's not everybody. And crime, and there's desperation. It's a melting pot of cultures. Every city in the world, every great city in the world is like this. And honestly, for many of us as Christians, the cities make us uncomfortable. I was, when I could still run, ran one of the major marathons in New York City, and my wife was pregnant, and she couldn't go with me, and she said, well, maybe you could invite a friend to go with you. And so I called a friend of mine from college, and I said, hey, we'll cover the cost of your airline if you want to come to New York City. And I love big cities, and my friend, okay, yeah, sure. And when he got there, though, he was terrified. Because he thought cities were places where there's crime and you're going to get mugged, and it's a fearful place. And he was anxious the entire time he was in the city. And I've found that many Christians, when they think about cities, that's how they think about them. It's like a place of anxiety. What do we do about that? Let me give you some stats about Wichita. Thank you for indulging me here. Here's some stats about Wichita. The greater Wichita metro area has 709, this is the latest population stats, 790,000 people. Did you know that they're predicting that in the next 10 years, there will be, not quite, but almost 1 million people in the greater Wichita area? The average income in Wichita is $63,000 a year. There's something like 199 different schools. That doesn't count the universities here in town, with something like 90,000 or so students. Here's the gross domestic product, what Wichita put out, and it was over $46.5 billion. Now, here's the interesting stat. The stat is from the Federal Reserve Bank, who keeps track of all these kinds of numbers. Did you know that number has almost doubled since 2013? Wow. We told you about the number of people that are on, there's 49,500 or so people on SNAP in Wichita. And Jay was at another thing not long ago, and they're identifying the needs in our city, and they were things like mental health and poverty, education, substance abuse. And then in the city, interestingly, this 800,000 or so people, there are 800 churches. When I came, we had as your pastor, been here almost 6 years now, and we had a bunch of conversations about the future of our church and where we were going and what we wanted to do and who we wanted to be. And I posed this then, and I want to pose this again because it's always important. Often what churches do is ask an important question, and the question that churches ask is, well, how's our church? I mean, that's an important question. How are we doing? How's everybody doing? Are people being cared for? Are people finding a place to serve? How are their families? That's an important question. It's not unimportant. But I've discovered that the churches who make a difference wherever they are, they don't just ask the question, how's our church? They expand the question because they have a bigger heart. And they don't just say, how's our church? They say, how's our city? How's it doing? How can we serve our city? Now, wouldn't it be great if in God's foreknowledge and providence and predestination, he had planted a church at the heart of the city that cared for the whole thing? Wouldn't that be just brilliant on God's part to have done something like that at the very heart of our city? Here's the map of our city. Do you see how the roads go around? I was looking at this the other day. The roads kind of almost like a circle, and we're right there in the center of all those things. That's where our building is located. And we have behind me, you can't quite see it. If you're new, you don't even know it's there. But we have this beautiful stained glass window. It's a long story. It's beautiful. We want to light it from the inside so people can see it at night and find a way to light it. It's a lighting thing. If you want to fund that, see me. I got ideas, all right? So, but it's this beautiful thing. And this building was built in the 50s. And you look from the outside when you drive away today, and you'll see this big round thing where there's a cross that's coming down right there. Wouldn't it be brilliant? Wouldn't it be brilliant if on the actual building of that church in the heart of the city was something that looked like the map of our city and said where we were and who we were for? Wouldn't that be, give me that next slide right there. You missed my moment. Wouldn't that be brilliant? If God had put a church there and said, I love cities. I'm going to put my people in the heart of the city. That tells us something about the great heart of God. Let's move on. I promise the next points are not as long. I do this every week, but yeah, I promise. Jonah was sent to the great city of Nineveh. Here's an artist's rendering of what the city of Nineveh looked like. It was the superpower. It was the largest city. Nope, back me up here. Nope, keep going back. That picture of the... nope. Okay, we don't have it. Nineveh is the great city. It was great. It was large. It was strategic. And here's the question. If you don't know the background of Nineveh, is what kind of city, or what could a city do that would bring God's judgment on it? And honestly, if you know the history, Nineveh, which was the capital of the Assyrian Empire, was a case study. One historian said they were a terrorist state. The way they conquered people was they went and they decimated and destroyed them. There are historical records about how when they would conquer, they would cut off someone's arm, and then they would shake their hand with the other hand that was left, just out of spite. This is a relief that was up here just a moment ago from the city of Nineveh that they've dug up. That just, if you could look at it closely, you can see there's heads. This was their mode of operation as an empire was we are going to terrorize people. They will be terrified of us. And most historians put them in the category of like the worst things that happened in the last 100 years, like the killing fields of Cambodia, the several million people that Hitler was responsible for putting in ovens, the 25 or so million people that Joseph Stalin killed, the millions of people who were literally macheted to death in Rwanda in the early 90s. All of those kinds of terrible things was what the city of Nineveh was like. And so surely if there was a place that put out those kinds of values, God would say, I'm going to crush that city. It's not going to be there anymore, right? Because you go to Jonah chapter 1, verse 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it because its wickedness has come up before me. And if you were reading that, you would have gone, yeah, that's right. This place is terrible. This place, they come and they kill us and they maim us and they destroy us. Now, here's what you do. If you read the book, you find out that God actually wants to have mercy on the city. It's just unfair. The last verse, shouldn't I pity the city of Nineveh, the great city in which there are more than 120,000 persons who don't know their right hand from their left and also so much cattle? Now listen, if it was up to me and I knew a city like that, I would not have mercy on that city. I would send the military in to wipe them out. And so it makes you ask, how could God forgive this kind of cruelty? Now, if you're in that same headspace as I was working through this, I was like, wait a second. How can God overlook cruelty like this? That's important because then you can feel with Jonah. Because here's Jonah. He was one of the prophets during the reign of Jeroboam II. You read about it in 2 Kings. And Jeroboam, the writers say, did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And Jonah was the prophet. And Jeroboam expanded the territory of Israel. And Jonah was one of the people who gave it cover. So Jonah was a hardcore patriot. He was a hardcore nationalist. And so when God says to him, go to that city, he's like, what? Are you kidding me? That would be like today, God coming to someone. Think of the most MAGA person you can possibly think of. And God comes to them and says, I want you to go to Hamas and preach to them. That's almost exactly what's happening right here. So if you're a careful reader, and careful readers of this story have said that here's what's happening in the book of Jonah. It's like Luke chapter 15, where Jesus tells the story of those two sons, and there's the younger son who runs away. Chapters 1 and 2 of Jonah are where Jonah runs away. And then there's the older son who stays and doesn't come into the party and is bitter and has contempt. And chapters 3 and 4, Jonah is like the older brother. And we're going to, in 2 and 3 weeks, we're going to look at the chapter 4, the last week of the series. But what you find out is that God relents, and then Jonah is angry. And you know why Jonah is angry in chapter 4 of Jonah, the book of Jonah? He says what he says. He says, see, I went and did what you said to those awful people, and I knew you'd be merciful. The great heart of God made Jonah angry because the great heart of God contradicted his. This is why the book is about the great change that you and I long for. What's the great change you and I long for? I want you to see Jonah's response to the great heart of God. Right at the beginning, he gets on a boat. I've got a map here. Put it on Google Maps if you can look and see. Over in the right-hand corner, that would be about where Nineveh was. Down here is modern-day Israel. Joppa is a port just outside Tel Aviv, Israel today. And then most scholars say Tarshish was way over on the southern part of Spain. So what does Jonah do? He's getting on a boat to go the opposite direction, as far away as he possibly can from God. He's trying to get out of that place. He doesn't want to go anywhere near that place. He needs a change of heart. Now, I just... Here's us, here's me, here's you. We have issues because we're human. And when we have issues because we're human, here's what we long for. We may not have this language for it, but what we really want is we want a change of heart. We want our heart to be more open. We want our heart to be welcoming. We want our heart to be warmer. The beginning of our theological streams from a guy by the name of John Wesley, if you know him, the beginning of his story is he was sitting one day, he was listening to Martin Luther's preface on the book of Romans, and he heard Martin Luther talk about the grace of God and how he's justified by faith, not by anything that he does. And he said, I felt my heart, it's famous words, I felt my heart strangely warmed. That's what we want, isn't it? I want my heart to be strangely warmed. Ask yourself, whatever challenge you are currently faced, wouldn't it be better if you had a change of heart or the other person had a change of heart, right? Every honest person knows what I really need is a change of heart. A bigger heart is what we need. So let me very quickly give you 2 keys to welcoming God's transformation in your life. Number 1, here's what you got to do. You got to start with the heart. You got to start with the heart. There's a book I've paid a lot of attention to. It's called Crucial Conversations. This is a bestseller, and it was about when you're in leadership and you have to have crucial conversations or in life. And you know what the first thing that Crucial Conversations says you have to do when you've got a difficult conversation? They say, start with heart. Figure out what it is that you want and start there. Before you even have the conversation, figure out, what do I want? Meaning, you got to cultivate the right heart. Here's what we're kind of guilty of as Christians, is we sometimes can bypass cultivating the right heart and instead focus on having the right beliefs. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not trying to say it's an either or, but I'm trying to tell you that right beliefs are no substitute for the right heart. There's just not. Jonah gets on this boat, and there's a storm that comes up on the water, and he's down in the hold sleeping. If you know the story of Jesus sleeping in the boat, there's an obvious parallel to this. He's sleeping, and the sailors come down to him, and in verse 8, and they asked him, tell us, how can you be sleeping? Tell us, who's responsible for making all this trouble? What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What's your country? What people are you? And then he answers. You could not get a more orthodox statement of theology and belief. Right here. Here he says it. I am a Hebrew. I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. Textbook orthodoxy. He had orthodox belief, but he had an oppositional heart. And here they are. They're these pagans, and they're calling out to their gods and doing their sacrifice. They had the wrong belief, but they had a heart that was open. Because they come to him, and he says, well, you got to throw me over. And they're like, we don't want to throw you over. And they try, and they row, and they do everything they can, and they treat him right. They do the right thing. They start with heart. Here's the second thing. You have to stay where the mercy is. Then they took Jonah, they threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. That's what you want, isn't it? The raging sea to grow calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord. They offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. Why did the sea grow calm? I think in this story, that's a way of saying that's where the mercy of God was. Because where the mercy is where God is. The whole book's a paradox. Jonah has all of the right beliefs, but he won't go where the mercy is. And the wrong people in the book always respond to the mercy of God. Jonah doesn't. Ironically, doesn't. The Orthodox person in his beliefs doesn't. The sailors respond to the mercy of God. The pagans, the cruel, wicked Ninevites, they respond. And Jonah finally relents, and he goes and basically says, hey, repent, suckers. And then they do. They reconsider. And he's mad. So while Jonah had this orthodox belief and an oppositional heart, they had unorthodox belief, but an open heart. Why? They were open to the mercy of God. How do we know that's true? The cross. Jesus is on the cross, and one of those thieves that's by him says, Lord, today remember me when you come into your kingdom. And there's no chance for him to take a theology class. Go to Sunday school for 40 years. There's no chance for him to do that. He's got none of the right beliefs, but he's got the right heart. And I promise you, when you discover that God operates on mercy, it will change your life. First for you, because you'll go, oh, wait, I'm in because of the mercy of God. And then for the people around you, because you'll go, oh, they also need the mercy of God. It'll change your life. We're getting ready to go into the Christmas season, and we love the story of the Grinch, and he had a heart two sizes too small. You know why that story resonates? Because all of us have a bit of the Grinch in us, don't we? We need a bigger heart. It's the change that you long for is in the same place that Jonah found, is that God invites you to be part of his mercy project. You've seen this picture behind me right here the whole time? You know where this is? This is the port of Joppa. I took the picture 5 or so years ago. This would be the port. Right here, where Jonah got on the boat. And I'd never made the connection because I'd never been there. It's just like I said, it's just down the coastline from modern-day Tel Aviv, Israel. You can see it. You walk 3/4 of a mile, there's the port of Joppa. And right here in this port, if you go up the hill, is a house, and it's where Simon Peter in the book of Acts was having a nap one time. And he had this vision, and these unclean animals came down, and God says to him in the vision, get up and eat. And Peter, who's an Orthodox Jewish person, says, Lord, I've never eaten anything unclean. I never do the wrong thing. And God says, don't call unclean what I've made clean. It happens 3 times. Then finally, knocking on the door is Cornelius, one of the Roman soldiers, one of the oppressors of God's people, knocking on the door. And it becomes clear to Peter right there that he's supposed to go with Cornelius. And he goes, and he ends up telling them about the mercy of God. It's a beautiful passage in the book of Acts where he says, oh, it's now clear to me that God is no respecter of persons, but fears men from every nation who welcome him. It's a turning point. Because you're sitting here because in the same city where Jonah said no to God and ran away from God, Peter said it was the same call that God was making to Peter. There are people who are not like you. I have mercy for them. Will you be a bearer of that mercy for them? And Peter says yes. Jonah says no. For me, that represents a door. Like, which way are you going to go? Like, which door are you going to walk through? And I'm inviting you as we begin this series. We're going to be in Faith Promise the next 2 weeks, and I'm helping to try and set that up with a dinner, a dessert night. You can come to this Wednesday night, meet some missionaries, because we're exploring the heart of God, the heart of God that's full of mercy, and we're saying, God, I want that change. I want your mercy in my heart. Please. I want to invite you to stand with me if you would. There's some folks that are going to be down front. They're going to pray, and I want to invite you. We've just been working to cultivate just some space where you can respond. And if you would like to have someone pray for you, invite them to come down now. They'll be down front. They'll pray for you. You can pause at these altars and pray. Let me go back to where I started. How's your heart? If you're in the place where you wish that you had a more open heart, have someone come pray for you. If you're in the place where you wish that your heart was warmer and you feel it getting cold, have someone come pray for you. If you're in the place where your heart is, you know that it's gotten hard in places and you need it to be softened, have someone come pray for you. You got junk and you need your heart to be clean, have someone come pray for you. Maybe you're here and you need a new heart. Like this, like every week during this year, I've been saying, hey, if you don't know the love of God, you can, at this exact moment, invite him into your life. And this would be the day you begin to follow Jesus and begin to receive and understand the mercy of God. And you just need someone to pray for you for that. I want to invite you to come pray. And as I'm praying, if you would like someone to pray, you're welcome to do that, and then we'll dismiss. Would you bow your head with me? Let's pray. God, thank you for your mercy. Thank you that you love cities because there are people in cities, and you love people. God, thank you that all of those years ago, before any of us were aware or able to make any kind of a decision, you planted this church right here in the heart of the city, and you gave it the name that said, this is my church for the city. Thank you. Now, God, in the places where we come in today with hurting hearts, wounded hearts, fearful hearts, hard hearts, we bring you us like we are. So, Lord, receive what we have currently. It might be nothing. Here's nothing. Thank you for your mercy that is new every morning. We're so grateful. Lord, give us a bigger heart. I pray this in your name. All God's people say.